Hello, everybody, and welcome into a new episode of Prep Rally, a webcast and a podcast talking about high school sports in Northeast Mississippi. I'm your host, Brad Locke, joined by Blake Morgan here. Blake, how are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Doing well, sir. Gene Phelps couldn't join us. He's got an appointment right now, but hey, we got a lot to talk about, so we can hopefully manage without Gene, if that's possible. But we've got so much to cover this episode, which, by the way, again, it's a webcast which you can watch usually around 11 a.m., running a little behind today, but you can watch it at djournal.com or catch the replay later on. And, of course, the podcast version drops later Wednesday afternoons. Listen to it in iTunes, your podcast apps, or online at preprally.djournal.com. Nothing but just a little bit of time. Well worth your time as well. We've got football to talk about. Football playoffs are starting for some teams this week. We got basketball because y'all did a preview section. Somehow found the time to write about basketball teams this week. We got a little bit volleyball and swimming to talk about. Just had state championships in those sports last weekend. We'll have athletes of the week, of course, as we do every week when the high school sports are in action. So might as well jump into it here, Blake. Let's go with the Week 11 football rewind, looking back at last week's key results as we do every week. And this was a big one. Starkville keeping playoff hopes alive. The reigning 6A champs, season hopes alive by beating Warren Central 35-28. And Warren Central is a really good team.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a huge win for Starkville. Willie Gay had a huge game. I'm going to talk about that kid a little bit later on.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's Ricky Woods. So you always expect him to be in the postseason. I think it just tells you how tough that division is.
Yeah, it talks to kind of how just – and, I mean, for a Starkville team that won it all last year, and, of course, that they lost a lot, especially on offense. Sure. But it's weird to think that a Ricky Woods team might not be in the playoffs.
Yeah, and they've got to play Clinton this week, which we'll talk about that matchup in a little while and talk about the playoff scenario there with Starkville. That was definitely a big win, like I said, to keep their playoff hopes alive. Kossuth defeated Boonville, a big 1-3A matchup, 21-18 was the final. The Aggies clinched the top seed out of that division, finished the season 5-0 in 1-3. Yeah, it was. Blake, sound like a fun defensive struggle there.
Yeah, it was an incredibly interesting game because Kossuth was averaging I think over 40 points a game.
Yeah.
And talking to Mike Maddox, Boonville's coach, before the game, he was saying how, we're going to have to play a perfect game to have a shot at this. And Kossuth just could not move the ball at all. Boonville came in with a great defensive game plan, and it was 0-0 at the end of the first quarter. Kossuth blew it open in the second quarter, and they were up 21-0 going into halftime. I'm sitting there writing the story that it's going to be a blowout. Trying to make things easier on me, and then Kossuth just couldn't get anything going. And what night for Boonville was the field. It wasn't slick, but it was kind of, I don't know, where the players kick off or do the extra point where the kicker kicks. It was, I don't know, the grass was it had been stomped down all year, right? And Boonville, the kicker slipped on the first extra point, and then so that put Boonville behind the 8 ball, and that's why they ended up scoring 3 touchdowns, but they lost 21-18. So who knows if he doesn't slip on that first kick, because on the second one they had to go for 2 and they didn't come up with it, and then on the third one I think they kicked the extra point and he might have missed it again. So I don't know, it might have been a problem for them all year, but if he makes all 3, it goes into overtime, and who knows how that finishes up.
Yeah, well, Boonville's defense, give him credit. Jaylee Adams, who we had talked about, I guess last week, he's really rounding into form. I mean, he had a good game, over 100 yards, but he didn't have one of those Jaylee Adams games.
No, he didn't. He didn't score a rushing touchdown, which was odd for him, right? Boonville, they came out, and I mean, Mike Maddox, you hear everyone talk about him. Whenever they speak about him, they say, unbelievably nice guy and just a terrific coach. And that's what Brian Kelly at Kossuth was telling me all week, was they're going to be well coached. And they came out with a terrific game plan and just came up a little short.
Another big game last week, a big rivalry game, North Pontotoc and South Pontotoc, and the Vikings walked away with this one 48-7. So that gives them the division title. That's in 4-3A, I believe. And but still, doesn't take away from the fact that South Pontotoc has had a great season. And defense, give them credit. Jaylee Adams, who we had talked about, I guess last week, he's really a September 23rd meeting. So it's been a few weeks, but Pontotoc has been playing as well as anybody. It's such a busy time of year for y'all. I hate it for you. All right, Blake. Appreciate you helping me out here.
Absolutely.
And maybe Gene will be back next week, we hope. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Again, you can access this show. It's a webcast and a podcast. Watch the webcast live around 11 a.m. every Wednesday, or the replay. You can catch it later in the day at djournal.com. The podcast version drops on Wednesday afternoons. You can listen to it for free in iTunes, your podcast apps, or at preprally.djournal.com. Give us a follow on Twitter at djournalpreps. I'm on Twitter at Brad Locke. He's on Twitter at Blake Morgan DJ. So that's it for this week. We'll be back next week here on Prep Rally. Thanks for joining us. Have a good one.